tuning in, Dr. Judy, WTF, What the Freud. And sadly enough, we're going to talk about what the Freud is going on a global level. And first of all, I am not a historian. I have very limited research and knowledge on history. I am going to use my mind map and my philosophical, psychological brain to mind map the human condition. But first, I want to start by saying that we all need to acknowledge the horrific attack that occurred back in September 11th, back on September 11th, 2001. And just I'll read you a little bit just because let's get some facts here. On the morning of September 11th, 19 terrorists, that's in 2001, 19 terrorists from the Islamic extreme group at 𝗟𝗫𝗓 hijacked 4 commercial aircrafts and crashed 2 of them into north and south towers of the World Trade Center complex in New York. A third plane crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. After learning about the attack on the others, the passengers on the fourth hijacked plane, Flight 93, fought back and the plane was crashed in an empty field in western Pennsylvania, about 20 minutes by air from Washington, D.C. And so this is just an example of a huge human tragedy and what the Freud are we doing as a human race. So I want to start by stating my ultimate goal, which is what the mind map was for. The mind map was called Join the Human Race, Healing Global Disconnect. And here is the intention that I had in mind. As a human race, I'm reading right from my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. So if you haven't gotten a copy of it yet, please do, Amazon.com, or ask for a PDF. Here I have a statement that I stated years and years ago when the project, the Mind Map project, was called Join the Human Race, Healing Global Disconnect. And this is what I said then, and this is what I say now. As a human race, we've become fragmented into nations, religions, social classes, politics, and races. The fragmentation has resulted in clash and fallout in the form of human atrocities. Although we have been able to soar to unlimited heights in many areas of human endeavor, we have yet to accomplish the final and most important frontier, which is to come together as a united humanity. Once we heal individually, we can begin to heal globally. So that is why I went from a macro model to a micro model, because in order to heal globally, we have to be sane. We have to be in good mental shape to heal individually. And this is a call-in show, everybody. So please feel free to call in 524-2599, and we're going to talk about the human atrocities on the planet. And I'm going to bring out my mind map, and I want to speak again in philosophical terms, terms that are helpful in explaining why is it that we are so fragmented and that we cannot get it together. So let's generally use the mind map to map out the global situation. So if you look at the mind map, you can see that it's divided into 9 panels. The first 3 represent our past, the middle, the chaos and crazy of today, and the last 3 panels represent the shift into synergy, the shift into healing, and hopefully unity, which I don't think we're too close to at this point. So the intention of the mind map was to recognize, first of all, that there is darkness and light. There is evil, there is good. One of my favorite books is a book by, I'll hold it up too. I love this book. Took me years to get through. People of the Lie, M. Scott Peck. The Hope for Healing Human Evil. And Dr. Peck was a psychiatrist. He is no longer alive. He delved into the concept of human evil on a case-by-case basis, tried to define what that was, and ended up actually talking about narcissism and even exorcisms for the extreme evil possessions, which he was part of on a couple of occasions. And then he ends his book by talking about Vietnam and groupthink and how people who are basically just people are capable of killing villages of women and children and just by following orders. So let's kind of try to integrate this information and this thinking. So let's go back to the mind map. So let's acknowledge that there are good forces and evil forces, and that we can recognize evil forces because they align with, I would call it, reference back to Freud, the death code. There's the death code, and then there is the life code. And so people who are enrolled, so to speak, committed to life code are people who are interested in enhancing other people. They're interested in bringing out their own light. They're interested in being a +1 to the planet. The people who are interested in the death code are, just for lack of a better way to say it, they're the shadows that are cast upon the human race that instead of elevating us, instead of making the world a better place, drag us down, or worse, end us up in clash and fallout, and hopefully not in the form of a nuclear holocaust. So let's stick with the mind map and keep going down the yellow brick road of this process. So if you look at panel number 2 on the mind map, thank you. Panel 2 is a metaphor for the shattering of what happens when we get further and further away from our light. So the more selfish we get, the more we are invested in only what is good for us as opposed to what is good for us and the next generation, and how to get along with other people who are not quite like us, which is key and difficult. The more we get shattered, and the more we get shattered, the further we move away from our light. And the further we move away from our light, we end up in panel number 3, which is a DNA encoding of horrible core beliefs and horrible world beliefs that take us into a very fragile structure. I will call it a worldwide narcissism, okay, worldwide way of encoding me. So panel 3 is really the me panel. I matter, I'm important, I. And as you could see, that the more we're wrapped up in a horrible system gone wrong, a system that doesn't perpetuate life, that doesn't perpetuate sharing and caring of other people, the more we create toxicity around us. And if you could see the toxic haze in the background, then you could see that we're just really creating a system gone wrong that is going to end up in, we'll move now to panel 4, 5, 6. So if you look at panel number 4, you could see that if we don't get it together as a human race, we're going to end up in chaos. And that's pretty much where we are in a general sense. You could see that the people on the ladder are hurling around. There is no rudder. There is no direction. There is no north, south, east, and west. There is no sense of security. And the people are not in any way, shape, or form joining forces. And so that you could see that metaphorically, this is a panel that represents the human race unraveling falling apart into the abyss of chaos. Now, what happens when we are disoriented and we're chaotic and we have no compass, so to speak? We end up trying to defend ourselves because we no longer feel safe. So let's move over to panel number 5. And panel number 5 is what I call on a global scale the ism panel. They represent these isms that I talk about, isms of politics, isms of racism, isms of nationalism, of any kind of ism that splits and divides us. So you could see that isms don't join together, but of course that they could. So just because you are a certain ism and you belong to a certain race, religion, country, philosophy, that doesn't make you of the darkness necessarily. It just means that you have your own belief system, you have your own boundaries, you have your own community. Chances are you eat certain type of food, you have a certain religious belief, perhaps you have philosophical beliefs, and all kinds of things go with that. The way you eat, the way you dress, the way you think, the way you raise your children, the way you organize your family structure, the way you educate your children. So these isms are not necessarily a bad thing, but what is a horrible thing is panel number 6. So if you look at panel number 6, you will see that these isms are not exactly friendly. So they're not joining forces, they're not respecting each other, they are not taking the light from each other. On the contrary, they're competing with each other. They are trying to annihilate each other. So you could see that panel 6, which represents the clash of the isms, is a metaphor panel for global breakdown. And so you could see that at the tip of the interfacing between the two isms is light. And so let's also address the fact that we are living in a world of ambivalence and polarity. So what could that represent, the light in the middle? It could represent breakthrough, could represent finally seeing the light and connecting to the good of humanity and waking up, or it could also represent a breakdown and a destructive force. So let's refer back again to eros and thanatos, Freud's term, Greek terms for death and life. So panel 6, we're always in panel 6, we're always fighting death code, life code. We're always trying to figure that out. Which side of the fence are we on? What philosophy is right? What political belief systems hold true? This is not going to change. People have differences. I'm not concerned with differences, although some differences may mean that it's just so far out there that the differences actually mean that they don't want anything to do with other differences. Oh, we have a caller. Thank you so much. I appreciate you calling in. Yes, what can I call, what name should I call you by?
Yes, can you hear me?
I could.
Oh, okay, great. I was literally going to pick off where you left off, telling the audience about how differences are so extreme to the point that it's radically disconnecting. I mean, I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And there was the presidential debate, which was in Philadelphia about a couple of days ago,
Sure.
and no one could speak about it without there being such extreme outrage. No one could agree to disagree without
Yes.
even wanting to share a sandwich.
Nobody
And it's so, yeah, and even the fact that there was a political, I have to watch my words because I'm on YouTube, but someone tried to basically hurt a political candidate. The fact that some people think that they should have, this person should have been hurt, or I don't want to say the rest of the word, is so damaging that there's such vile hatred. And I was there in Philadelphia. Well, I was in Philadelphia, but it was in like 3 hours away, and I felt this visceral of hatred, and it was pretty darn scary. And it's disconnecting to even want to reach out and to just for our own safety. It just, there's such. I had it, but also, I had a dinner. I guess you could say a dinner with two friends, and there was something on the news that came up, and then it became a political debate, and now no one's talking to each other. And but there were other things involved, but it was mostly that no one is speaking to each other.
Yeah, that's
They got so heated up over the discussion.
Right? The Democrats.
I'm sorry?
The Democrats are not interested in the Republicans. The Republicans are not interested in the Democrats, and yet we call ourselves the United States, and we're anything.
And that's why it's so divided.
Yeah,
and that's what's even gaslighting at this point in 2024. You know, I could say that I seen a military soldier, because two of my uncles were in the Army, and they're now retired, and I don't speak to them for no reason other than just being disconnected my whole life. But they keep in contact, and one lives in California, one lives in North Carolina, and all military vets and retired. However, they're the most private people you'll ever meet, and the kindest and the most respectful. So, but there's such disconnect that no one nowadays you cannot have. There's no United States, and there's no united countries, and it comes down to even neighborhoods. Everyone just shuts the door. No one talks to each other.
Correct. Right. And that's the saddest thing in the world, is that we're scared of each other. We're scared to tell the truth. And so therefore we can never really expect other people to see through the lens of our eyes, and vice versa. And without that ability to do so, we're never going to achieve panel number 7, which is interconnection. If you look at a panel number 7 and just use it as a lens through which we see, some people see through the blue lens. Let's just use that as, you know, the Democratic lens, or the red lens, the Republican lens, or any kind of lens you want to put on it. When we're just staring through our own lens for the sake of aligning ourselves with an ism, just because of what, I don't know. But if we're not really self-examining and standing in each other's shoes, then all we can expect is clash. We're not going to learn from each other. We're not going to in any way do the best in the world to understand each other. And, you know, that's my job, right? My job is not necessarily to agree or disagree with people, although sometimes I vehemently do. My job is to understand their consciousness, understand the cause. So do you see how complicated this is? Everybody's got different lenses, and it's not aligning.
Yes, and I could also see exactly how disconnecting it is, because unlike I don't even speak about religion, because I think that is extremely extremely personal. And I had a friend that I did have to cut off because they tried to tell me that I need to forgive my mother and tell her that she needs to see the light. I said, I'm not going to her house. And it led to a complete disconnection of the friendship because he was standing by his religious beliefs. He's like, well, go to your mother, tell her you forgive her for. I said, well, she's not sorry, and I'm not going to put myself in danger. And they kept rambling on, and I just had to set boundaries. And then I went to let's just say see a different side and say, okay, maybe I overreacted, but then they did the same thing differently again. So, but then I could see how there's this disconnect. I didn't mean to shuffle through topics, but yes, there was a friend that was religiously preaching, and I just said, keep your opinions to yourself.
Right,
and even if it's politically, everyone's entitled to their political outtake on everything. But when it's done, let's agree to disagree and have a great day and wish each other well. And that's the best part of human healing. Instead of saying, cursing each other out or,
Yes.
I'm not looking to curse anyone out. I keep my mouth shut at this point, but I do see how it triggers down to neighborhoods and people just are so disconnected. No one even speaks to each other, and it's. I'm 44, and I remember even 20 years ago how society was so different. People were even cared about each other. The empathy is so low, and I say it. I do see it.
And it gets worse because 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗧 refers to this, I'll call it groupthink, that when you become steeped in an ism, and then that ism has an army, and that army is telling you to go kill a bunch of people, and you're not a natural born killer, and you don't even hate these people, you don't even know these people, right? And they're telling you to kill, then you're being asked to basically put your own values aside in order to subjugate yourself to something higher. And if you're going to do that, then you better make sure that that something higher is for a higher good than just what you're thinking. So oftentimes we're just trusting that they know what they're doing, they know what their goals are, and then it becomes very mechanical, like an army is mechanical. Do what you're told. Here are your weapons. Yes. Go kill these people. You don't even know these people, right? Sometimes I liken it to animals. I eat animals. I'm not really happy that I do because I love animals, and I don't mean only how they taste. I just love animals. Okay. Now, if I had to kill my own animals to eat, guess what? I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I just would probably.
You know what? I don't think I would either. I think I would either just eat grass or just constantly do intermittent fasting because I just couldn't do it. And there's something that one of the military veterans spoke about, and you mentioned isms, and I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was very important. He said at the end of the day, it's not about being a Republican, a Democrat, either, because I'm registered independent for a reason, because I don't want to be an ism. And what he said was, I'm looking out for the greater good of the country, for the future. And that clinked to me like I did register as one party, and then I said, you know what? I don't want to be typecast as that. Like it's like I don't want to be the scapegoat of the family. I don't want to be the I am the truth teller, but that was then and this is now. And then when he said he's looking for the greater good of society, you don't need to be an ism to want the greater good. And that's where I'm at, where I've been at for the past 10, since I decided to do healing and, look at the big picture. And what's the greatest good for society? What's the greatest good for my well-being? and it's just closed off. I don't think there's no answers. Are we just going to have to keep rolling with it? I mean, can you give answers that
it
there's
looks
this?
like that, doesn't it? It's just that unfortunately we can't avoid the truth that we're all interconnected. And if empathy comes back full force, which it's dwindling, then if I hurt you, I hurt myself. If I hurt an animal, it hurts to hurt. I love people to hurt other people. It hurts me to hurt you. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Because then you are me and I am you on some interconnected level, which is truth, because we are one, or at least we started out that way. We share one planet. And if I hurt you in the process, I'm also going to be leaving toxic waste. You saw the panels, the panel number 3, where there's all this toxicity in the air, and 4, 5, 6. You see all the haze. Well, my
Yeah.
hatred or your hatred or anybody's hatred and the acting out of that hatred is going to leave toxicity, whether it's physical toxicity like nuclear fallout material or mental toxicity. Isn't that what I talk about all day long? That if you don't clean up your multi-generational past and you're going to hand down psychopathology with the emphasis on psycho, you're going to be leaving toxicity to the next generation. So we've got to figure this out, or we may all be right in our isms, but it's going to blow up in our face. So what do? How do you establish if one ism is evil versus another ism is good? Well, I think the buck stops where one ism is trying to, let's go back to how we treat patients. If there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, smothering, controlling, narcissism, if our isms are doing that, they're not healthy isms, right? Same way as if people are doing that. If people are sexually abusing other people, they're not healthy. If they're verbally abusing, they're not healthy. If they're trying to control and smother, they're not healthy. And unfortunately, on a global level, we do not know how to play a bigger, better game of life because we have given up. We are now in power and control. Maybe we always have been. We power over each other. We're trying to control each other rather than gain the good from each other, which is really my panel 7. That's my dream, okay? Is that I could say to you, oh, okay, are you Italian? Great. I want your recipe for spaghetti and pastas and whatever
Yeah.
you have, and wine and cheese and whatever. And I want to know about your artwork, and I want to know about how you've created this beautiful society. And I want to absorb that and take that into my ism and bring that into my community and share that, and vice versa. And I'm hoping that that other person or nation or country will say, what beautiful culture you have. Wow, it's really different than our culture, but what a beautiful culture you have.
Well,
Somebody
I think what. I'm sorry. I thought you were. Because what I had to have added was I do come from an Italian background. However, there was a time that I was. I'm also half Spanish, Irish, and German and Indian as well, and that stems into even my vision, how certain things have happened. And it's interesting because I could not even when I was a teenager and I started to look very Hispanic, Latino, they say, because I cannot identify as Puerto Rican. My grandfather was from Central America, then he moved around and he changed his name. He was a womanizer. But I was never able to identify as Italian, even though I had an Italian restaurant, Spanish, because I was like the whole melting pot. So it's like even growing up, I could never fit into an ism. Maybe that was how the whole narcissism thing started to swim around because I just couldn't conform to one.
And
The
today,
whole, yeah, because
today we're, the what is that, 23andMe or the spit test, which I've never taken. I'm sure I'm pretty Eastern European, pretty pure because my parents are Hungarian Jews and my grandparents are Hungarian Jews and everybody seems to be a Hungarian Jew. So, I'm pretty clear on my ancestry. It's just that it's not that clear anymore. There are people that identify as part this and part that and part everything. And my dream has always been that before we are an ism, which I have no problem with being a Judaism. Literally, my name is Judy and I am a Jew. So I have no problem with being a Judaism. I love being Jewish. I love my culture and traditions. But what were you going to say?
well, you also said in other episodes that you've read so many other religions, just like I related to when you said you read the Christ consciousness and you read this and that. So I was able to, because I don't really identify myself in a specific religious creed, but I respect everyone who does, and that's what's lacking is just the respect.
That's what's lacking. Whoever you are, whatever you
Yeah,
are, is
whatever, like respect and
deserving of respect. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to join that tribe. It's just that you don't have to
nope.
annihilate that tribe either. And that's what's going on a global scale. I mean, come on, when you've got Al-Qaeda and people crashing into twin towers and crashing into countries and clashing with religion and politics and everything, then we've got to take a step back. I just wanted to, for a minute, go to panel number 2, which is representative in my mind map of the cracked lens of perception. And also from a mind map model, when I work with people, it represents the amygdala and how important the amygdala is in all this. Because
Yeah.
what
It's a very tough panel, number 2.
what's that?
It's a very brutal panel, how everything just crashes, and it's a shame because it's so scientifically accurate how wonderful it's done, but at the same time you could feel it in your stomach as like, oh, you could just feel the downfall of humanity or just society, and then let's go back to family, and then it all just
Yeah, and the reason I'm pointing to panel number
crashes.
2 right now is because panel 2 is our amygdala. It's the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn mechanism. And if we're always throwing ourselves into global threat, where do we get to relax and think and sort things through? It's almost like being in PTSD all the time. The world is in PTSD, and then we're surprised that people are firing guns off for stupid reasons or reacting to things that are not even all that dangerous and reacting as if they are dangerous, or vice versa, acting as if they're not dangerous when they are. Everything is just like upside down, isn't it? And there's no clarity. So that's why instead of going for that big picture, join the human race, healing global disconnect, which is quite a project, I decided to get on the micro level. Let's calm down. Let's learn how to emotionally regulate. Let's teach our next generation how to have boundaries. And let's give our next generation the kind of love and mirroring and attunement that makes for a healthy human psyche. When you are in a war zone, it's impossible to really have an environment where the mother could calmly breastfeed or the father could be protective of the mother, because oftentimes the guy's off to war and the mother is left vulnerable, and then everybody's being blown apart. So you could see how important it is to be
You know
able.
what's so important about you said that, Dr. Judy, and I have to tell you once before I hang up the phone, because I love all your shows, but I just have to tell you, first of all, I'm not I don't want to say Republican, Democrat, anything ism. What I want is for the greater good of this country in terms of just general protection, human decency, and just safety and a better. I became a little bit conservative, but I'm still very, very open-minded and just the good of the country without putting myself under a stamp and then marked for life like a tattoo. But yes, I just have to say I'm respectable, and if we could get back respect. But I did have an uncle who joined the army, and my grandfather had 5 kids from from my grandmother, which was a second relationship, and he slept around. He was a womanizer, and my uncle wind up doing the same thing, having
Well,
5
that's
kids from a different
exactly
woman. Didn't
being
say this.
unhealthy on an individual basis. And so, what are we expecting for the world to be healthy if we have no boundaries and we have no security and we have no parents that we can respect and protect us? It doesn't bode well for forming a human race. But I just wanted to get back to the trauma, whether it's childhood trauma or a combination of childhood trauma plus worldly trauma. What we're seeing is that the world events are a macro version of our internal structure. So you've heard the expression, I'm sure all of you have heard the expression, as it is above, so it is below. As it is below, so it is above. So if in our below we're not well, then on a macro above level, it's not a pretty picture. And then if the macro level is so toxic, it doesn't support the micro growth. So we've got a lot of sorting out to do. Of course, I would like to
Is
hear.
there anything we could do? I mean, me, right now as a listener, a viewer, and a participant of the mind map, is there anything I could do? I mean, you walk around the block. I mean, I'm talking about human disconnect. I walk around the block and I'm walking my dog, and someone makes eye contact with me directly, and I say hello, and then they turn their head. I'm like, oh, okay. So now, and then it happens again and again, and then it's like, okay, I just certain people don't say hello to. It makes you question how people are just so in this cycle. So is there anything you could recommend?
Yeah,
Or just,
number one, obviously don't take it personally. They don't know you from Adam. We don't know if you remind them of their brother or anybody, okay? The term projection, people do a lot of projection. You don't know what inner turmoil they're suffering from. The unhealthier people are, the more they make other people suffer and cut people off. So if you encounter somebody that just isn't warm or friendly or doesn't want to connect,
maybe just don't be too friendly?
just keep walking. What could you do? Okay. But that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you have to project it on the next person. So that's what I recommend. Don't project it on the next person. So just because somebody didn't engage in a synergistic way with you, don't think that don't try to avoid eye contact with the next person and the next person. Give everybody the opportunity of receiving your light. And if they can't, they can't. You don't have to share your light with people who are close to it. You don't have to share with people who
Yeah, that will darken it
are
in any way.
blocking.
And yes, and people can block. Yes, people can block it very much. thank you for doing this show tonight, because I'm really glad that we're speaking about it openly, because even if we don't like any candidate, let's just hope they have a nice life wherever they go. We don't have to think violently about things, and it's hurtful that there's such anger in people.
That the two candidates couldn't really say, well, we disagree here. However, I want to work toward understanding you. But because what they're doing is they're trying to win a contest. So it's not, again, it's not
Yeah.
cooperate,
Yeah.
it's power and control. Oh, you screwed up. Okay, I'm going to dig in. I'm going to set you up. That's going to be a trap. I hope you trip. Hope you sound like an idiot. Okay, that's not
terrible.
That I respect. I have no regard for it. So in terms of advice, if any, the whole notion that consciousness is causal, and before you become this ism, join the human race, become humane, become human.
Become humane.
Not a humane being. So wouldn't it be nice if, if we're having a discussion and I say to you, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I really want to understand what brought you to that kind of thinking. Are you aware when you think like that, I get scared of you? Because when you think like that, I keep thinking about the consequences it might have on. Are you aware of that? So I think that what's missing is this interconnected struggle to understand each other and to create something bigger and better than just our little limited way of thinking. And that to me would be very beautiful. If you said, well, I disagree with you, and I'd say, well, why? Because, well, if I did agree with you, that would mean that I'd have to, like in your example, I'd have to forgive my mother. I go, well, I could see your point that you're not wanting to forgive your mother because your mother hurt you so deeply and she did nothing to make good on you on it or anything. She didn't own her own stuff and clean it up. So I could see how my philosophy of you forgiving your mother might feel like a betrayal to you. Wouldn't that be a cool discussion?
Yes, and I had to cut him off because he would not hear my view, and he almost got off on sounding superior, and there was no synergy, and it just seemed like power and control instead of synergistic, as you said, 100%, and that's why I mean, even if we're disagreeing about a candidate, I mean, there shouldn't be no power and control. And, what the best advice someone gave me was about 20 years ago when the politics were up in the air. It could be a little bit, maybe 24 years ago, but they said, Bobby, and he was very stern. He said, when I go into that box and vote, no one knows who I'm voting for, and I'm going to keep it that way. And they snap their fingers. And I click, and I hear him say that, and he couldn't be more righter.
And this is another.
I think that's not a word. He couldn't be more true, because if nobody, but now everyone's throwing it in their face, and if you don't like it, then it's just everyone's so vulgar. But he just snapped his fingers twice, and he said, "When I go in that vote, there's a reason for the curtain." And I wish it was like that again.
And as we all go into the booth, and I hope we all go into the voting booth and express ourselves. It's so important that we express ourselves, is that we don't get caught up in a person's image. Remember years ago, there was a book called The Making of the President. I think it was by Marshall McLuhan, and it was about image, who's flashier, who's got, I don't know, we can't get lost in the image.
It's the topic of narcissism, of who's flashier, of who's more this than that. And it has nothing to do with the person's character, which is terrible, to think that people care care more about an image than the character and the protection of this country that we live in, and walking around the block, with our dogs and going to a store and doing simple things. We have to protect because here's the thing, the country comes down to a state, and then it comes down to a city or a town, and then it comes down to the neighborhood and the community, and that's where we're at right now. So I do see it. I do see a separation. So that's why I said I'm so glad that you did this show, because I see it in my own, even though it's not the best time in the world to meet new people and make new friends and open up my social circle. I mean, I would love to, but there's such a divide, and it's I see it and I feel it,
I know I think it's almost like if you're going to be a presidential candidate, learn how, you have to go to school to be a psychologist or an engineer, whatever. Learn how to have conversations that are inclusionary. Learn how to have conversations that are even inclusionary of another person's opinions. Don't use people as words against them. Question until you have clarity. How's that to end the show on the notion that don't just try to checkmate people. These are people. These are people who worked very hard to become candidates and went through life-threatening situations to be up there in, this is a dangerous thing to be a candidate for the president of the United States. That's like saying, wow, I can die any minute. Somebody could assassinate me. We got to have a little bit more respect that they're up there to begin with. That's a pretty brave thing to do. But I'd like to hear more about people really trying to get what they're saying, as opposed to position and ism themselves and try to trap and control and embarrass the other candidate. That's the kind of discussion that I'm looking forward to, and I hope that that I'll hear it sometime soon, especially before the election. So I want to leave people with the idea. Pardon me?
Right after former President Donald Trump was assassinated in Pennsylvania, I came home and I watched it, and I literally busted out crying. And I don't want people to get, I don't want to get a 𝗬𝗏 hate mail, but it wasn't even literally about him. It was the fact of the hatred was so visceral.
No,
well, I've also seen things about Kamala Harris. Someone said, "What do you hate about Kamala Harris?" And the first thing I thought about was, I don't hate her at all. I really don't. And other people wrote, "I don't hate her, but I don't agree with this," or with Trump, it's like, "Oh, I hate," but it's just when it goes to the point of wanting to just off someone, or as you said, assassinate. I didn't want to say that online, but you said that, and it's scary. It was literally scary. There was Robert F. Kennedy saying, whose father was assassinated, saying that he's seen it and it was horrible. Had it not been the jerk of a turn, he would have been dead.
Yeah, of course. I think that there's got to be more regard, more respect, more kindness from candidate to candidate, and let the issues be clarified and questioned, and try to see through each other's lens, and then let the American people see the thought process. It's sort of like, remember when you're turning in your math homework, you don't just want to turn in the answer. The teacher wanted to see, how did you arrive at this place? And that's what's missing. Well, how did you arrive at this? How did you arrive at that? What made you think that that's going to be better for the general public? This is the kind of stuff that I want to see. So, no, I very much appreciate you calling in. I think I spoiled my audience.
You should have been one of the debate moderators, and I'm just going to leave it at that, because you would really bring such light, and it's just so refreshing because I just want to, Dr. Phil, of all people, I know you're Dr. Judy, so, but Dr. Phil did interview one of the military men and two uncles that are in the military who are very, just, they mind their own business. But the military man said, I want the good of this country. I don't want to be labeled as Democrat, Republican. I want just the good for my country, my children, my grandchildren, just the safety. And I just want to leave it at that. It's literally, I hate to say this, it's heartbreaking. It's sad, because it stems down to communities and towns and our neighborhoods, and it's really just sad. But I'm sure, as one philosopher once said, you might know his name, this too shall pass. I don't think it's 𝗟𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗧, but it could be another one. So let's just,
Yeah,
I guess this too shall pass.
The philosophy of consciousness is causal. Remember, Max Planck, father of quantum physics. Consciousness is causal. And if you're in the consciousness of power and control, you are absolutely going to get chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. If you're in the consciousness of wanting to empathize and share and grow and be the light to the human race, you're going to be in 7, 8, 9. So just keep that in mind. The mind map really is predictive in its value. So all you have to do to get to panel 7, 8, 9, and I'm not suggesting that it's easy, is to be humane, be the light, have empathy, understand each other's perspectives. Don't try to destroy another human being just because they're not you. That's true narcissism, isn't it? Oh, you're not like me, therefore you're bad. Okay, well, there goes the world, right? Nobody's like nobody. Even within a culture, everybody's different. Even within a religion, people are different. Okay, I'm going to end the show. Thank you so much for calling in. I hope next time I get callers and we're in a very, very delicate, we're always in a delicate world event situation. And just remember, humane. Join the humane race. You're human, but now it's time to become humane. Thank you so much for joining in and thank you for your call in. I really appreciate it. Good night, everybody.